Hi, my name is Troy Wheeler and I'm from Meatsmith in Melbourne. Today we're going to break down a side of lamb. First of all, we'll start with breaking off the shoulder, and we'll separate the shoulder from the loin. Then we'll move into removing the belly and then removing the leg. First of all, you start by marking through the 5th and 6th rib, counting from the front of the shoulder and marking with the saw. Now we'll remove the loin from the leg. So identifying where the end of the hip bone finishes, which is usually the first vertebrae. Now we'll separate the ribs from the loin, marking along the loin. And here we have the lamb forequarter, the lamb loin, the lamb belly, and the lamb leg. And that is our full side. Here we have a forequarter of lamb. Lamb shoulder is made up of a fillet that is located all up around inside the neck, and then a blade bone and blade subprimals that exist on the backside. As you can see in the top here, these glands that exist here on the inside of the neck are where your sweetbreads come from. We'll remove those sweetbreads and any excess fat. I'll start by removing this blade because we're going to keep that as one whole piece. Just finding the seam that separates the shoulder and then the neck fillet. Which gives us the shoulder blade. From here, remove any large layers of fat. Starting from the top end of the brisket, we'll burn the meat all the way along the ribs. Tracing all the way around the neck bone. Here's the full neck bone or the vertebrae. Here we'll remove any heavy sinew and just separating the brisket from the neck fillet. Trim away any excess fat. There you have the neck fillet. Trimming any excess fat off the brisket. So here we have forequarter cuts. We have the lamb blade, bone-in shoulder, the lamb neck bones. We have the rolled lamb neck fillet or rolled lamb neck, a sweetbread, and a boneless lamb brisket. Here we have the lamb loin. First of all, I'm going to start by removing all of the waste across the top and removing this small piece of hanger steak. Hanger steak is a small muscle that sits on below the diaphragm inside the body. Start by separating the loin from the rack, identifying where the last bone is located and the vertebrae joint beside that. Separating the rack and the loin. The loin will bone out by removing the fillet. It's located on the top. Lamb fillet. And the fillet side strap. Another small eye muscle that lives alongside the fillet. From here we'll remove the bone. So we have a back strap or a boneless loin. And then coming down the ribs. Here we have a boneless loin, cleaning up that excess fat. Loin can be used as a roasting piece or a back strap, or to be rolled into a rolled roast or a noisette. The rack, we're going to remove the cap and then cut some rib chops out of the rack. Just separating that cap along the back, leaving a thin layer of fat. Gives us a lamb shoulder cap. We have our rib. So we'll be chopping through each singular bone for some unfrenched rib chops. Got some rib chops, so from here we'll French a few. Nice clean bone. And here we have the lamb loin. So we have the loin bones, we have the small hanger steak, we have the fillet, we have the side strap of the fillet, we have a boneless loin, we have a shoulder rib cap, we have the rib chops, unfrenched, uncleaned, and we have some Frenched lamb cutlets. Here we have a lamb belly. We're going to get some ribs and some small amount of skirt steak off the top end, and then separate out the ribs. Start by taking off the film that's on the top of the ribs, removing the skirt, removing the other piece of skirt, now to separate the ribs. At the end of each rib section there's some light cartilage along that line, and then square off the bottom of the ribs, removing any excess bone into trim. On the bottom end of the lamb belly for some trim, we'll just remove the cover on the back of these lamb ribs. Just pulling the felt off the back, the ribs, leave a nice layer of fat. Here we have the lamb belly. We have two types of skirt. We have lamb ribs and some trim. Here we have a lamb leg. We're going to get a shank, top side, a knuckle, a silver side, and a rump. First I'm going to start by removing the hip bone and the tail, exposing the rump, and then the rest of the primals. A small amount of skirt steak sits on the top, the inside of where the lamb rump is. We're going to remove the tailbone by opening up the piece of butt fillet that sits on the inside of the leg. From here we're going to identify where the tail joins the hip bone just by putting a knife underneath and opening it away from the hip bone. Tracing through and removing the tail. From here we'll continue tracing around the hip bone. And just getting inside where the hip joins the femur bone. Coming up underneath. And completely removing the hip bone. From here, removing the small piece of butt fillet, a little piece of tenderloin. What we've done is expose the rump at the end of the leg, so we'll just slice that straight off, trimming out any excess fat. Gives us our lamb rump. From here, we will bone straight along the femur bone and through the joint of the leg bone to leave the shank intact. It's working on the inside of the bone, around the joint, and through the knuckle. From here we'll cut the Achilles and just trace around where the next muscle joins to separate the shank. From here we'll open up where all the primals are that surround the bone. Here we have the top side. And around the bone is the knuckle, cutting just below the kneecap and tracing around the bone, rolling out the knuckle, leaving the skin behind. From here, just removing the bone. And trimming up the rest. Taking what trim we can and exposing of the fat. Removing the gravy meat which join the shank to the leg primals. Leaving us with the top silver side. From here, you can use these smaller leg cuts for small steaks, for nice little grilling cuts. And there we have our lamb leg. We have a tail. We have a small butt fillet. We have a leg femur bone. We have a shank. We have an H-bone. We have some skirt. We have some small gravy cut. We have a silver side. We have a rump. We have a knuckle. And we have a top side that's been cut into some small grilling steaks. Here we have the lamb shoulder blade. We have the rolled lamb neck bones or vertebrae. We have the boneless lamb brisket. We have the sweetbread, lamb shoulder cap. We have unfrenched and uncleaned lamb ribs. We have French lamb cutlets. Tenderloin, side strap of tenderloin, lamb hanger steak, lamb ribs. We have the loin bone or vertebrae, boneless loin, 2 parts of skirt steak that came from the belly, some trim from the belly, the knuckle from the leg, top side and some small steaks from the top side coming out of the leg, lamb femur, lamb H-bone, the shank, silver side, the tail, the rump, and some trim with the gravy cut.